To make a photograph as honestly as one can generates an artifact that bears witness to one's personal truth. Our pictures are our footprints. It's the best way to tell people we were here. Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 166 for the end of August. There goes the summer.
There's the summer, yeah.
That's okay.
Too much work this summer, my friend.
You've been working your butt off. Yeah. I won't go into what I've been doing because we've talked about it a lot, but yeah, it's been hot and sweaty, and I've been changing shirts twice a day.
Okay. Well, I was working on the deck in the backyard, and I got rained on a little bit. We had a little storm pass through, and it really cooled off. We had a really nice warm summer by my standards anyway, and it really cooled off, and I'm okay with that.
We've had no rain. In fact, I think New York City and other states in the area are in drought conditions. Wow. And I've gone over to Greenwood a couple of times, and they have got 3 big bodies of water, or like 2 big ones and 1 smaller one. And the smaller one is it's almost totally dried up, and weeds are growing in it. And it's one of the places where the migratory birds come, even the little ones, and there's just no water there. And then the other 2 are, you can see I was there a couple of days ago, and a egret was just walking on the water looking for birds, rather than walking on it. But you didn't have to stay on the edge of the water. In fact, he couldn't, because the water level was so low that if he was on the edge, he wouldn't be able to reach fish.
Right. Yeah.
So it's been. We had 1 rain a couple of days ago, and it didn't cool crap. Yeah. In fact, it felt like
it just made it humid.
It made it worse. I just came out of the subway, and I was like, yeah. I was coming out of the subway because I had gone to for a first trip in I don't know how long to the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Wow, fancy! Look at you.
Fancy, yeah. In fact, I finally joined them as a member, so that I didn't have to make any kind of. They have new arrangements, and you have to schedule your time and buy a ticket. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing that.
No.
And I figured I've owed them enough of my I don't know, allegiance and stuff like that. They should pay them and become a member, and but that way I could just walk in. You don't have to have that restriction for if you're a member. You just walk in whatever you want.
Can you bring a buddy?
You can bring a buddy. In fact, I got the basic membership, and you can bring a guest and can walk in any time. So I know that you're planning to come out here sometime. Yeah. So
what was it? What was it? The Museum of Modern Art that you were?
Modern Art, Metropolitan Museum.
Oh God,
it's not modern. No, it's not modern.
I'm sorry, man.
There's 2 museums. Actually, I'm
not from there. I'm a foreigner.
I haven't been to the Modern Museum of Art in a long time either. But the Met is always a great place because it's giant. It's also very old, and they have a very mixed collection of work. They do all sorts of stuff. So there's the Egyptian section. I like going to the Greek and Roman section, and actually they have an exhibit now in the Greek and Roman section where they have been they've taken certain casts of certain sculptures and bronzes, and they painted them because they are talking about the original statues from ancient times. Many of them were painted. Were probably painted. So we think of them as white, because all the colors have been bleached off.
Right.
But a lot of them have actually had paint on them, and it was kind of fun to do that. But I actually went there because I wanted to take pictures. It's like I haven't been to, I love to remember when we did our show, the art of art, right?
Art of art, yeah.
I like taking photographs of sculptures, especially ancient Greek and Roman sculpture. And I've been there, I take pictures of the same ones, but there's always different light there. So I went there with the medium format because I figured, okay, let me try it and see what pictures will look like on a larger sensor camera. And it was great. It was wonderful to walk around with that camera. and take pictures because again it was slow and
Right.
deliberate. But while I was there, I also had forgotten that there's a photography exhibit that I wanted to see. In fact, I had posted it up in our unusual Discord server, and it's the photography of Bernd and Hilla Becher.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully, I'm pronouncing their last name right, Becher. But
Cool.
I had never heard of them before, and I don't know if you have.
I had, yeah, a little
We
bit.
had. I don't know where I am. I'm in this world. I'm like so many photographers I don't know about.
Yeah.
But their work is how do we describe it? They photographed. They were one of these rare husband and wife photography teams, and I say rare because you don't really see husband and wife walking around with cameras that much.
Nope.
Oh, here I actually took a picture of the. Hang on, I can read this if I can get it to show up. There we go. The renowned German artists Bernd and Hilla Becher, 1931 to 2007. That's when Bernd lived, and then Hilla, 1934 to 2015, changed the course of late 20th century photography, working as a rare artist couple. They developed a rigorous practice focused on single subject, the disappearing industrial architecture of Western Europe and North America that fueled the modern era and two world wars. So their imagery is of these sort of industrial farming buildings and sites and
So grain elevators,
grain
water
elevators.
towers,
Yeah, well, everything. I mean,
foundries.
foundries. Yeah,
Yeah.
all these things, steel mills. And they approached it sort of as documentarians, photographing. Like would take like and they used a large format camera. And I think because they showed a little video of them, which was great, a little 7-minute documentary silent video. And it wasn't a 4x5 camera, but it was an 8x10. I'm wondering if it was a 5x7. Are there
5x7,
5x7 view cameras?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it didn't look as big as an 8x10,
No.
because they're both carrying it and they're setting it up, but it certainly looked bigger than a 4x5. But an 8x10 is humongous. 8x10 film cameras. So I think it was a 5x7 or whatever the equivalent would be between. And they're photographing these sites and they're walking around and they're doing sort of a 360 view, making like multiple, 8 shots from different angles of most of these places. And they call it a typology. Or even in the building, they called the buildings themselves anonymous sculptures.
Okay.
But the show was humongous. It was, I have never seen so many prints of this kind of stuff in one place.
So I would just think on the face of it, you're taking pictures of these apparently kind of nondescript, sometimes run down looking structures. I mean, it clearly has had an impact on you, and you've seen, I've seen pictures and books and everything and have an idea about what it's like to go through, to look at that work. What did you get out of it? Because it's a lot of the same kind of tone and
it is
presence on the print, right?
Well, first of all, the prints, this is, and I don't want to jump the gun here, but I want to talk about, the idea of photography artifacts. And I think prints sort of fall into that category a little bit. The prints of these in this exhibition were unbelievable. They were, first of all, they tend to be very large, not overly large, but I mean large enough that you could stand back about 6 feet and you could take it all in, but you can go really close up and see all the details. I mean, like, they're shooting these giant structures or structures with a lot of detail in them. And the prints allowed you to do both, quote unquote pixel peep in a way, but I think they invited that. They were beautiful gelatin prints, none of this was digital. This was all film.
Yeah.
From what I can tell. Given the time period, yes, they didn't shoot digitally. It was all film. I think that there were no digital cameras that had that kind of resolution.
No.
And they were arranged in almost like I don't know if you think about like a botanical garden, recording, the specimens. They're almost like a specimen thing. But there was just something about the way they were presented and what they were shooting, and also it made the world feel their world felt like it was abandoned, like it was post-apocalyptic in some way, not really, but I had some feeling of like, what was that show on Discovery when all the people are gone or something like that. There was just
Okay.
But it was something, I don't know, the tonal quality of it. There was I can't describe it in words. I don't really have the words, but there was something about the tonality of the prints that was just for me. I don't know. I was just drawn into. I almost wanted to like. It's like I wanted to eat them,
Yeah. I
but with
see what
my
you mean.
eyes, like I
Yeah.
just, nothing that we have in front of me. And like I'm looking around, not even like really good printed books. Nothing matched that, and
Mm,
it really made me think about the print.
mm,
Again, it made me really consider and sort of miss the print.
mm.
We've been spending so much time looking at screens lately, and photographs on screens, and not reflected light, transmitted light coming
Yeah.
into our eyes, and oh yeah, that's how we're seeing, even with PDFs and stuff like that. Oh yeah, that's how we're seeing pictures. And there's something. It was almost like my eyes were relieved too
Right.
to see prints. Now this could be any show, I think, with any kind of photography show, but I think the subject matter also helped. Um,
Yeah.
there's something that I resonate with, since, a few weeks ago I went to Hudson, New York to again put on my Walker Evans shoes and do sort of a documentarian of the buildings there, of some
Yeah.
of the stuff. And it wasn't only about photographs. It was really just to get away, but I like that. I like that sort of documentarian recording of
Yeah.
these objects, these giant objects.
Yeah. And
And
it's
actually
like
they had,
the street photography, the whole discovery. I love that. Like,
yeah,
you find it, you get lined up, you have a pleasant experience of actually shooting, and it makes you all that much more excited to do
right.
all the work that
Exactly.
comes after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't even feel like work when you say that. It's just, it's
Exactly.
like what you do. They had one section of pictures of houses in Germany. I can't remember the name of the style of the houses.
Bauhaus?
No, there were, hang on. I got the, oh, here, framework houses.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if I can read this. Anyway, I won't read it, but the style of the house, they almost look like they're white with these sort of framework wooden lines in them.
Okay.
Can you picture what? Actually, I'll show you on the screen if I can show you. You're not gonna People in the audience are not gonna see this, but it might help Ward.
I see.
Focus it. That kind of framework
Like
house.
this, like a Tudor, like what we would call a Tudor house in some way.
Is that what
There's
it
like
is?
a stucco with boards in between, or plaster with boards in between to
Right,
mark a
right.
grid on it. Yeah.
Right. And again, they call it a typology. So they're going around finding these houses, and the exhibition is putting all these things together. I mean, they're meant to be together, right? So there's in this case, there's 15 prints, 5x3 grid, each with a different house on it, but all sort of presented at the same size and whatnot. So you're looking at
Okay.
them as a group of images, as a story in a sense about these framework style houses, but then you're invited to sort of look at each one individually.
Okay.
And so the whole exhibition is this. I mean, it's like there was one wall with I can't remember what the subject matter was, but there were 30 prints, giant. I mean, like, these were big. Took up a whole wall of the gallery, and it was 30 prints of like steel mills or something like that. So anyway, I wanted to mention that. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I like to tell people. I love to tell students, like, go to museums for a couple of reasons. One, great opportunity to take pictures of people. Great street photography. I got a good picture while I was there. I think you saw it. I posted it.
Yeah, I like
in the
that.
Egyptian section with all the figures, all these seated figures, and then a person standing next to it. I waited a long time to get that, but anyway, it's like
He was reading the little blurb on
he was reading the
wall.
blurb, right? It's like
Yeah.
I'll put this picture in the show notes. It's funny. I waited a while to get that because I'm like, oh, that's a nice angle, and then this is with the GFX, and so
Yeah.
I could wait and take pictures. But anyway, going to see photograph people in a museum is fun, but then all of a sudden you're surrounded by artwork, and you don't know that a show might be there that you didn't see. And I'm so happy to see the show. In fact, I bought the show book.
Oh, cool.
Well, I got a discount too because I'm a member. So,
Can you bring a buddy? Oh, I said that already, didn't I?
yeah, you can bring it. I can get a discount when you come there, and the show's up until November. So if you're in New York, not you're gonna be in New York in November, but anybody who's listening to the show, if you're into this kind of work, I mean, you may not be into this kind of old architecture, typology, photography, but go to the Met and see this show. You don't have to pay extra, and you can photograph in the gallery. I sometimes they don't let you photograph in the galleries, and so I was taking only iPhone pictures because I just wanted to record it for. I think we should do a show on this with an episode on these people. It would be great to do a
Okay.
deep dive on them and talk more about it. So I'll leave it for that. But again, it was I haven't seen a photo print like that in I don't know. I mean, I haven't been to any shows and stuff like that since lockdown was March of 2020. I don't know. I think maybe I can't remember the last time I was at the museum. So it was a really refreshing. And then I walked through the galleries, the European art. It's always great to see paintings, giant paintings. One of the things I did was take a lot of photographs of these stodgy, these portraits. Portraits from the 1700, 1800. The people are very, they're not smiling.
Yeah.
And there's an app on my phone called Face App, which will put smiles on people, right, amongst other things. And so what I always do is I take pictures. I find these stodgy portraits, and then I run them through the Face App, and it makes them smile. And two things happen. First of all, it makes the people look like more relatable,
Right.
because all of a sudden they have these smiles. And then I'll take them, a bunch of them, and I'll post them. And I'll say I made a trip to the Happy Museum. Anyway, it's
Cool.
worth seeing. It's worth seeing any kind of art, and
with the
whatever
Bechers, it's a different thing. It's not like the stuff we're normally exposed to or would, look
Right.
out for.
Right.
And it sounds like you had a very unique experience there. And if I can get out there this fall, I'm definitely going to.
Oh yeah. And just the logistics of this, the amount of printing, and last thing I'll say about this, the prints, the consistency between them all are, which you may not think about this, but you must know this more because you've been working in the darkroom longer than I have. But to get consistent prints from different subjects, right? So like they're shooting different subjects. They're always shooting on overcast days, but they're shooting different subjects over time, and to get them all to have the same tonality, it's got to be a bitch to do that.
Yeah.
So
I never had the patience for that. My subject matter changed all the time. So
right. Yeah.
I could never. I got one, 2, or 3 prints once I got settled down.
Yeah,
and that was it. That was all that was ever made.
Yeah, I mean, this is not like pressing a button, hitting Control P and print. And constantly spitting up the same print from an inkjet printer. These are gelatin prints, and so they're darkroom, working with large negatives, and again different subjects. And so anyway, I'm sure I can dive into more, and I'll leave that for when we do a deep dive on them, because I like to spend more time with this stuff. But anyway, fantastic stuff. Fantastic. So
cool.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I actually, since I took some pictures of some sculptures and whatnot, and I was thinking, okay, well, I posted it on Facebook and whatnot. And I was like, okay, where else can I post this? And lately, I've what happened? So about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that guy.
I think it was 2 weeks for you.
2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
And people probably know this guy, Peter McKinnon, on YouTube, YouTuber or something like that. But there was a post that he put up about anytime I see something about Instagram, is Instagram dying? And I'm like, okay, let me see this, because I'm kind of anti-Instagram now, in the sense of, like I said, my Instagram account was hacked and they've done nothing to get it back from me. And then I also realized that, Instagram has turned into something else, right? Yeah. It's no longer just a photography site. They've even said that. But Peter McKinnon got onto YouTube and said, "Is Instagram dead?" And I watched it, and they talked about Vero, Vero, which was a social media sharing app site that had came out, I think, in 2015. Perhaps, and they got sort of infamous in 2018 by some, I can't remember if it was a data breach, something, or I don't know, but there was something that went on that I also remember, like, okay, well, I don't want to be part of them,
right?
And sort of put that app onto the side and whatnot. But his video, and he's got such a giant YouTube following that after I saw his video, and then I went on to other social media, started seeing people talk about Vero all of a sudden. So it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious that he had some sort of impression on people. Obviously, he had an impression on me. So I went back to Vero and I looked at it, and I refired up my account, and it seems like a pretty decent photography sharing site. And I don't say it reminded me of early Instagram, because I really don't remember early Instagram. I don't think I joined at the beginning.
No, it was very crude. I mean, if you look at the difference between Vero now and Instagram, Instagram seems very, very crude.
Yes, even I mean they haven't really changed their interface all that much over the years, but yeah, Vero looked really nice. I started looking through it, and you can separate stuff out, and you can have photos. You can filter your timeline so that you can only see photos. You don't have to see videos, and there's no ads yet on this thing. But I've noticed that people are starting to, like, again, I was looking at my Twitter timeline, and people are talking about Vero again. Other photographers are like joining up. So I thought, let me fire it up again, and it's starting from scratch for me. I don't have any that many followers. I know you're following. There's a handful of people.
I'm following you, and you're following me.
Yeah, and I figured if I had to start up on Instagram again, I'd have to start from scratch anyway. And I really don't want to go through Instagram's bullshit again. Excuse me. Yeah. I usually don't say things like that on this, but I really, in this case, believe that Instagram has turned into something that I haven't been on there since, I don't know when I got hacked. April, I think it was April or late March. So around that time. And, I don't miss it in the sense that I'm not, it's one of the things I would spend the most amount of time on. I think we even talked about it here, how much time spent scrolling on Instagram. And I do miss seeing some of the work that I was following on there, but I don't miss it that much. So I don't know, what's your experience so far on Vero?
Well, I love from them when I first signed up. I really like how classy the interface is. I like how it does this auto hashtag, makes it much easier.
Right. It looks
I
at the picture.
Intentionally didn't hashtag before because I thought I created an artificial audience, and I mean, my growth of followers was very slow compared to many others because they did hashtag. But they had this falling away of people. When I noticed, when I didn't hashtag, the followers that I did have, I tended to keep. So I always had this kind of slow and steady growth. I'm only into I don't know, not that many, less than 1,000, probably around 1,000 followers, not that many.
On
Instagram. And I'm fine, whatever. With Vero, I'm happy to use the auto hashtagging, and it makes it easier for me to add other hashtags that are a little bit more bang on, more appropriate to the subject, and just let that go and let it fly, and we'll see how it goes. But I really I think it's very classy, and I like the other options for music and that sort of stuff that you could do. I have no use for it right now, but I like the option that it's there, kind of latent, waiting for if I do have an opportunity to share something that's in a little bit different form of media, then I can exploit it.
Right. And it's nice that you can filter that when you're looking in your timeline. So if you don't want to see flickering videos or whatever, you can just tap on photos and just look at photos.
And I've noticed a couple of my followers have said they have ditched Instagram in favor of Vero. Yeah. From here, from Calgary, a fellow street.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Photographers, just to do something else. And I don't know if I'll do that because my print sales, maybe half of my print sales, which are really nothing, they're a trickle, but they come from Instagram.
Yeah.
So
I don't see much of a future for Instagram. I mean, everybody's beating up on it, and they're doing their best to turn it into TikTok, which doesn't. I have no interest in moving, videos of people doing whatever. It's not. Yeah. It's too much crap. And every fifth picture on my timeline, so 20%. Yeah. Well, it's not a reel. No, it was an ad.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know if I had reels popping up all the time. There might have been some, but I do know that every 20% of the imagery that I look through was ads. And I sat there and I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ad. And so it's not, I never made any print sales from it. Well, I'm glad you were able to do that. So I'm not losing anything.
Right.
And I appreciate a better experience. I mean, the other thing that's nice about Vero is that, you don't have to do any of this BS with your aspect ratio of your pictures. You just put them up. You just put them up. If you have a vertical picture, it shows the entire vertical picture.
My Stampede Heads pictures, a lot of them, the waist up pictures that I take are the full frame, right?
Right.
And yeah, that's great. And the proportion on the screen works fine. It doesn't need to
Exactly.
be
It
square.
does work fine. I mean, actually, it does work sort of against horizontal pictures or panoramics, but that's always been the nature of a phone anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think the app works in horizontal. It doesn't flip to horizontal, but the aspect ratios are really nice. The quality looks really nice. The sort of the way the UI is a very soft
Hmm.
interface. It's not very bright or uh, I don't know,
I
harsh on
don't.
the eyes
Yeah, I
like
don't feel like I
Instagram is.
have to put like on some of my pictures. I put a white picture frame on it just so that I
Right, but
could differentiate it.
That might work. That might work when someone's got a phone in the daytime. But if they're going to night mode on an iPhone, then you got a black
Yeah.
app with a white border. And this at least just presents the picture with a soft background,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a very neutral experience. So and I'll at the end of the show, we can give our Vero addresses. But I so far I'm enjoying it,
Yeah.
and I also notice I'm not spending as much time on it. But that's because I don't follow enough people.
Right.
It's
I'm
just starting
still in the
again.
single digits. So
Still in the single digits, but to me, it wasn't about again, it's not about followers and stuff like that. I'm really not. It's nice to get that a little bit, but I'm also more wanting to see pictures. Now, today I was going through it and looking for new photographers to follow, and the sort of the trend I could see it kind of there's a bit. I might sound a little critical here, but it was a little bit reminding me of 500px.
okay.
A little bit more towards at least the ones I was seeing. And again, I didn't spend too much time on the app, but the ones I was seeing sort of featured was a lot of landscape and fashion photography,
Hmm.
and maybe not as much street photography like Instagram was, at least the people I was following. Again, I haven't dived into it fully enough, and I imagine now they're going to sort of get a resurgence of people since McKinnon has got such a following, and that's rippling
Yeah.
through. I posted on Twitter that you want to see my pictures, new pictures, go to Vero, and I
Hmm.
think like a handful of people I know signed up, right? And
Yeah.
so as more people sign up and the variety sort of increases, I think it'll be a better experience. But
Yeah.
I'm all for trying something different, and if something is a new photography experience, if it's a bit more community, then Instagram started off as a photographer community, and now it's just a place of commerce. I think that's what it is, and good for Instagram. I don't really, I'm imagining that that's going to happen to that's kind of what all these app developers want. They want to make money and stuff.
Hmm.
I don't know how long Vero's going to stay without ads, but I imagine they have to make money too at some point.
Yeah.
But I kind of recommend joining Vero, and if you're really into wanting to have a better photography experience, and again, photography, maybe in videos too. I mean, again, it's a media thing.
Yeah.
Take a look. It doesn't cost anything, and you won't. I don't think you'll be seeing pictures of people's painted fingernails and TikTok dances
And
and whatever else.
breakfast dishes and
Breakfast dishes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I get the sense that it's more photography oriented. So.
yeah.
And speaking of apps, going to the next thing, I called an audible on this show. So I was like, I
Okay.
didn't necessarily want to talk about this, but I think it's the sort of the elephant in the room, at least for me. And again, maybe we'll also just keep it short so that we can table this for a larger discussion. And I think
Sure.
I'd like to have a larger discussion, maybe with other people about this. But lately, if anybody's, unless your head's been in the sand for a while, there are there's like a handful of apps now that are artificial intelligence art creating apps.
Hmm.
And I joined one, and I'm using it on Discord, and it's called Midjourney AI. And what is that? Well, it's basically, the basic thing you do is you get a prompt on the screen, and you type in something. And like, for instance, I was typing in Warriors of Dune, tin type, shallow depth of field, blah blah blah, and then you send that prompt off to an artificial intelligence behind the the man behind the curtains,
Discord server. Yeah.
behind the Discord server, and the thing eventually spits out an image based on the prompt that you put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, it's highly addicting. Number
But
one,
it doesn't just send you one picture.
it doesn't send you one picture. It gives you 4 pictures, right, in a
Yeah.
grid, and in different variations based on the prompt. And from there, you can go on and make more variations from the pictures that you see, or you can start to upsample. So you can, in other words, get a higher quality, more detailed version of one of the 4 pictures that it spits out to you. And you can keep going with this. You can keep making variations and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's artificial intelligence, I don't know how it's creating pictures, so don't ask. I don't know anything about the behind the scenes stuff. It's a little dubious, I think, but it is creating. I've been creating all sorts of imagery with this, but like one of the things I've been doing, one of the things that was fun to try was people are posting this stuff. So I've joined the Discord group for this thing. So people are posting pictures. I'm also on the Facebook group for this, and the pictures that people are posting are insane. I remember I told you I collect pictures, like I download them and store them on my phone. I'm doing this for. I'm not doing anything with the pictures. I'm just collecting them because I'm hoarding these digital pictures.
Okay, what's your definition of insane? What are you calling insane? Like beautiful, strange,
beautiful?
What?
Indescribable. So first of all, I'm feeling something for people who are illustrators, because I can imagine this kind of stuff is going to eat into people who do illustration for a living.
Dare we use the word disruptive then in this?
Disruptive would be the word I would say. I can't describe. I love science fiction, right? I love science fiction illustrations. I used to love looking at book covers. In fact, I remember just going sometimes to Barnes and Noble and just looking at the science fiction book covers. I wouldn't necessarily buy the book, but I love the art on the covers. And a lot of what people are doing, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. There's a lot of cyberpunk city at night, volumetric lighting, cinematic, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And they're spitting out a picture and you're looking at it and it's semi-realistic and illustrative. It's a mixture of everything. And sometimes it looks really strange. The artificial intelligence puts in things that don't make sense and it kind of distorts figures. But there's also not everybody who illustrates make things look realistic. They do, interpretations of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that stuff going on. So as I look at other people's work, and then some of the stuff that comes through. Now, there are other apps that people use, and I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head right now, that are a little bit more realistic and create portraits of people. Actually, some of them are so realistic that they look like photographs. And that makes me wonder about the behind the scenes stuff of like where the artificial intelligence programming is getting the imagery to start with it, because it has to start with something. It must be pulling images. Like I have a feeling it's pulling images and sort of like piecing them together, like collaging. But some of the stuff looks so realistic on other artificial intelligence platforms that makes me not worry really, but like I said, illustrators and like stock photographers, you guys have to watch because this stuff is. I was making things like, okay, so on Midjourney AI, I would do something like, give me a spaceship in, near a nebula with a planet in the style of Chris Foss. Chris Foss is this British science fiction illustrator who I love, right?
Yeah.
And the thing spits out an image, and I'm like, it looks like a Chris Foss. Maybe not exactly, and the ship is not quite. But
it's an interpretation of
ship. Yeah. It's an interpretation. And the thing is, like, I was reading this. Someone actually posted, if I can find what they said. I can't remember what they said, but like, I've never been able to draw, right? Really, not well. And I've always liked to draw. If I wanted to draw anything, I would like to draw like Chris Foss, spaceships, and imagine like, I don't know, because I like sitting there and looking at it, and my imagination kicks off for no reason. I don't want to make book covers, but it's addicting in that sense. Like I'll do things like make, spaceships things. But one of the things I did, this is why I wanted to talk about this, was I said, well, let me try this. Shane Balkowitz he actually posted a picture somewhere on one of the photography Facebook groups, which he did on Midjourney AI, and it was a tintype. I think it was the Angel of Death he did. It was beautiful.
Right. I know.
You
Yeah,
saw that one, right? Yeah.
Creepy.
It was creepy, and I was like,
and it looked like a tintype. Yeah,
it looked like a tintype, and so I said, well, let me see what I could do with the prompt with tintypes, and I want to do something. I said, what would I like to do? I started thinking, maybe I want to reimagine Dune, right? So I started putting in prompts that included things about Dune and tintype and shallow depth of field and no color and blah, blah, blah. And it started spitting out some stuff, and I started tweaking them, and I started collecting them, and I created a collection of tintype style imagery that were reimagined a Dune. And I looked at the stuff, and I was floored by it. That's why I kept doing it.
They look like costume images for the movie is what they look like. Like,
well, someone said
actual people, like they look like actual people dressed up with all of this stuff around. It's amazing.
So I filtered it down as much as I could because it was really hard. A lot of the pictures are really good. I filtered it down to about 40 images, and I put them up on the Midjourney AI Facebook group, and it's gone insane. I've never had any amount of comments and views on a group of pictures before. Now, I don't take credit for these pictures at all.
No,
I didn't make them. I prompted them, and so in a sense, it was a collaboration with me and a machine. But that's sort of in the sense of like, if I was like hiring, an illustrator and saying, look, I need these kind of drawings, and then the illustrator does them, and I go, well, tweak. So there's the collaboration in the sense of like I created the idea perhaps, and the machine is following through. I don't take any credit for the making of these images at all, other than that I prompted them to be made. Yeah. And I tweaked them, and I kept getting them to the way that I liked them. So that's about the amount of credit. And that's why, like, let's wait for another show, because actually I'm starting to think about like the copyright, just all this stuff about it. But anyway, that being said, someone wrote, getting a zillion comments on these. First of all, within like a day or two, it was like, 1,500, reactions on Facebook, which I've never had before on anything. And people are saying these are fantastic. One person said Dune, directed by Joel Peter Witkin, which I thought,
yeah,
which I thought was perfect. And I thought as a reimagining of Dune, like this would be really insane. One of the interesting images that it spit out, I did a sandworm, and those were really hard to prompt because just the way the machine was doing them. But I got one, and it looked like a sandworm, but it didn't look like a sandworm. And I thought that's really cool because if in the books, they talk about sandworms and stuff like that, but and you expect to see like an earthworm, a giant earthworm, which we've been seeing in the films. But I thought, well, what if, after they spit out the image, I said, that's really interesting because on an alien world, an alien creature, we might call a sandworm because we have no words for it. It might act like a worm, but it doesn't necessarily have to look like one, right? And this thing was spitting out imageries that I thought, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. That's that's a different way to interpret the way a sandworm. Anyway, it was insane. People are posting this and saying, I'm thinking this could lead to another remake of Dune, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing I thought about as a practical purpose is like, this would be great, again, for maybe artists as a pre-visualization. Mm-hmm. Like if you wanted to pre-visualize something and you needed help, and you say, oh yeah, this could spark an idea to create an image. I mean, if I wanted to do a tintype of someone, in these kind of costumes, probably I could find someone who could make a costume and then, learn how to make a tintype and then find this kind of destination and actually start to create them in reality.
Yeah.
So that might be sort of the practical part of it. But anyway, I wanted to just mention this. I mean, we talked a little long.
I played with it. I took my free time. I don't know what it is, 10 seconds of CPU time, and played with it over a couple of days. And I think it's good for, what is the prompt on Discord? Is it /dream or something?
Imagine.
Imagine.
/imagine, yeah.
That's a perfect word for it, because when you're trying to think of something, you enter it. So I had done a couple that really and you just got to freewheel it, right? And it was just
Right.
different
Right.
things I pulled out of the air. One was medieval night photo booth. Um, First grader class pictures of scary clowns. What was another one? Death Star plans as a 1940s poster.
Oh, I didn't see those
So
from your
no,
years.
and I didn't download. I didn't keep it. It's
Uh-huh.
somewhere anyway. And I think somebody else was doing something very similar. But just those things, like what would that look? Just off the top of your head, you're just imagining this thing,
Right. Right.
and then it creates it for you, and then you have this immediate personal connection to it, and you know which ones you would like better than others, and you can drill down until finally you have this distilled image of this thing you had just this little vestige of imagination about, and now it's kind of made manifest, and it is something. And that's what you're saying, it's addicting. It is a way for a person who's not creative in a particular way to express a creativity with, with paintbrushes he can't control, or in the case of the scary clown kids, the first graders, it was perfect. They were perfect. And I know they kind of scared you guys, but that was exactly what I was going for. I know our friend Mark Ryerson was like, man, he says it's going to take me a while to get over these, for heaven's sake,
Right. There's a nightmarish quality to some of
Yeah.
this stuff
And
too.
that's
But
exactly what I was going for.
yeah, I think that the implications for this for creatives and photography is going to be I don't even know what it's going to be actually, but I know it's you said at the beginning of this discussion is going to be disruptive, and disruption is
Yeah.
this is going to be another generation of disruption. I've lived through a couple already,
Yeah.
and this is going to be another one. And I don't know what it's going to be like for people who do this kind of stuff for a living. I mean, some of the other AI programs do, like I said, realistic renderings of like like interiors. I was seeing some really nice interior design
Mm-hmm.
of like apartments and stuff like that. Now I think it's not based on any kind of schematics. It's I think it's the same kind of thing where you're saying imagine this, that, and the other thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if some point where you can start, well, I've got this house plan, and imagine, what I can fit into this house, and what's that going to do for people who do that kind of stuff. And photography too, stock photography. Imagine you can say, first of all, you don't need model releases anymore, right?
Yeah.
Most likely, depending on how these companies set up their rights for using the imagery, they're going to I need an image of someone buying fruit at a grocery store, right? No longer
Mm-hmm.
do you need to have a production going to a grocery store and getting the permission of the grocery store, or watching out for logos and all the,
Yeah.
as easy of a picture that it is to describe. It's a pain in the butt to actually to do that as a photographer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now a designer can sit there and say, I just need this image, and they're paying a subscription fee to an AI service, and boom, there's their image with a unrecognizable, purely made up person in
Yeah.
an unrecognizable generic store buying, and then they stick it in their ad, and boom, that's it. Photography, that photography is no longer necessary. So
Yeah. There's that. Well, and also too, I mean, coming back to the imagination of it. I mean, I think I typed in, pretending I was typing in mock song lyrics. If you want to do your, an album cover or something, distant cities of sunshine, of beauty and color, you put that in. Oh my God. Like stuff like that. Just whatever, just something poetic that evokes something.
yeah,
And I did a few of those, and they were pretty amazing too. Enough for
yeah,
you to certainly go in different directions and chase them down. But
yeah. I'm totally amazed by this stuff, and there's the part of me that wants to play with it and use it. And again, for me, I don't know. Although I'm starting to think people are asking me like they would like to buy prints of this Dune stuff, and I'm like, who owns the pictures?
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
sort of like GarageBand. I think they're letting you. Are they? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, but I don't see anything saying, well, I couldn't upload them to some like create a book out of them, and blurb and sell a book of these pictures. In fact, I would love to make a book of these things and have them as
Mm-hmm.
prints, as just a book, because I'm very attracted to this photography.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where it's going to go. You know, very curious about it. I love the idea that like the machine, like in collaboration with the machine, that kind of stuff doesn't scare me, and I'm going to be really interested in the disruption that it's going to
Mhm.
mean for everybody. I think this is going to be a big deal because it's not going to just what about music, right?
Home
Artificial intelligence.
decor.
What?
Home decor.
Home decor. Oh, you mean like, and then outputting this to like 3D printers.
Yeah.
Someone creates something, and what it's like you said before, for those of us who don't know how to maneuver a paintbrush or really know how to set up I'm not going to do tin types necessarily soon, or certainly on the planet of Dune with some giant person dressed up as the Baron von Harkonnen.
Yeah. Thanks for that one. That one scared the hell out of me.
I'll put those in the show notes.
That
They're
one's almost
great.
statuesque. Oh, I know they're great, but
They're fantastic.
right,
I mean,
right.
I don't even know where they're coming from. I don't know what, like, I can't imagine, but I'm surprised at that. Real photography. I don't know. Again, this is probably not a good comparison, but I find I put these images up, and they are very compelling to look at, and they're getting a giant response. And then real photography, even like when I had Instagram and stuff like that, and I had like 2,000, 3,000 followers or something like that, would barely get half a dozen or a dozen people giving it thumbs up. And
Well, it's the novelty of where it's coming from. I mean, that's part of it for sure.
right. I mean, we're all like-minded. I mean, everybody's in this AI Facebook group, so we're all kind of looking for this stuff anyway, and we're quick to give praise. But yeah, it's I think I talked longer than about this than I really thought to. But I'm amazed by it, and I'm really curious about it. And if anybody has any experience with it, if you want to reach out and let us know what your experiences are and what you think about it, I would certainly love to talk about this. But I want to keep an eye on this and see where it goes. And I'm also recognizing that I'm part of this. Like I have created something, helped to create something. Excuse me, because I can't even get the words right here. I didn't create the stuff. I prompted the stuff.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm really attracted to, and it seems to be something that other people are attracted to. And it's like, what does this mean? What are we going to do? And where if you can just suddenly imagine, whatever, film noir style, Ronald McDonald. I should put that prompt in when we're
do that in and put that in the
I'll put that in the show notes
because we don't have the Ronald McDonald's in the stores anymore. So
no, someone did Elon Musk working at McDonald's, and it was one of the other programs they did, and the faces, you could tell they were Elon Musk. They looked a little distorted, but he's like wearing like a sort of McDonald's shirt. He's like handing out fries.
That's cute.
It was, and this brings up again the other thing we talk about is the deep fakes, the deep fake videos that are coming out and stuff like that. I know this is sort of a little bit away from photography, but and I just looked at the time. We're coming up. I know I wanted to talk about photography artifacts, but I don't know if we've got time for that to get into that. What do you think?
Oh, we can talk about it a little bit.
We'll talk about it a little bit. All right, we'll give it a little bit of time. Anyway,
sure.
so let's put that on the to-do list for some future time and keep an eye on this. But we'll put some of these photos in the show notes and images. I can't call them photos. There's nothing photography about them. They're using, at least the ones I'm doing are using
they're all generated. Yeah.
They're generated. They're using a style of photography,
Mm-hmm.
and they look like they're from the images that I was prompting look like they're from the late 1800s, shot in, some foreign country or something like that on the deserts of Saudi Arabia or something.
Anyway, so what we were going to talk about today was the whole thing about the artifacts. And we got about 10 minutes left, so we'll have to talk faster.
We can talk about that. Yeah,
faster.
It came up because of when we were talking to Ibarian X,
which, by the way, was a fabulous interview. And if you haven't downloaded it yet or picked it to listen to on your podcast app, please do that, because it was definitely something something to listen to. It was a fantastic discussion about creativity and deeply personal subject matter and that sort of thing. And it was really, and the, as educator, if you're an educator, how do you impart your knowledge to others, and how you appreciate people that are in your charge when they do create work. And really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the subjects we came up was, and that he talked with Greg Heisler, was the whole idea of the media as the thing, the actual artifact, about the
right.
I have pictures I took of the flower garden at the Calgary Zoo on Kodachrome 25. Like, man, oh man, you look through those pictures and it's like stained glass, and they are amazing. And that film was there with me on that day. I mean, I don't have the camera anymore. They actually caught the photons that were reflected off those flowers, and maybe they didn't reproduce the colors exactly as they were, but they did in their own Kodachrome way, which is stunning. Underexposed them just that third of a stop, just to give them the extra bottom end and extra deep reds and that sort of thing. And I think of my negatives, just over here, I've got my 2 big binders of black and white negatives from my years in the dark room. And what little traveling I did in my 20s and 30s, those negatives are there, those strips, and the prints that I have, they took the photons that came through the negative and went out onto the print, and have this physical manifestation of that moment when I took pictures of that neon sign or that old camera store or whatever it was. And there's something, I don't know, what do you want to call it? For me, it's not so much nostalgia. I think looking at the image gives you some nostalgia, and we talk about that all the. And you were saying before we started the show about this, sound like a bunch of old guys, and I suppose maybe we are.
Well, we are, yeah.
But there's a comforting thing about you have these artifacts around you, like, and another analogy I have for my photography is the subject matter is the unformed clay that you're going to be using to form into the final product. And
right.
If you like those jars, those jars and plates and dishes and stuff that you created around you that kind of give you comfort, not just, not like a security blanket or anything, but just something that you created that has value, that has some kind of intrinsic value for you. And how that kind of experience, at least with the photography part, if we're talking about negatives and prints and that sort of thing.
Well, I also have, I did a ton of stock photography in the 80s and 90s, and a lot of what I used as props, because I didn't have a AI generator back then to say, generate this, and, little man looking on stock.
Sir Topham Hatt, yeah.
Yeah. So, I've got a whole box up here of, Prizer, HO scale, little mini figures that became very popular in stock photography back when. Well, though I believe I'm one of the couple of people who actually started that trend. And those were part of my, I look at them and they were part of my image making. They were the raw ingredients. And the left, they're, I'm going to say it, but in the same way, they were with me in the studio. They were creating the image. They were, I don't know what to say about this. There was something about like the props that I kept, which I haven't gotten rid of yet. It's one of the few things my office is cluttered with props from my time of doing still life photography in a studio and stuff. And so I think about those as, I called it, I said artifacts, they're the leftover things from the time that photography was had a sort of a different meaning for me, but it was a different time, right? And again with digital, one of the things we're missing is we're not recording anything in reality. It's recording light, changing it into electricity
in a physical way. Yeah.
It's not doing anything physical. Yeah. Even our prints, and this harkers back into the beginning of the Becher show, even an inkjet digital print is it has nothing to do with the original scene,
Yeah.
whereas a negative like you would put in an enlarger, even though the print is not directly a result of the light from the subject, but it is in some sense being uh, it's being created by it. It's
Right.
the shadows of the negative are causing the change on the photographic paper. So there
Mhm.
is maybe I could say like it's an echo,
Yeah.
of the original. And
Well, I
but
remember.
your sense, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just to follow on with that thought. Just before the pandemic, the Vivian Maier exhibit was here at the Glenbow Museum, and those are printed from the negatives. Those are gelatin silver prints, and they do have a different quality. From I can vouch for that myself. They do have a different, I think, more interesting, possibly better, probably better actually,
Yeah, I think so.
rendering of their subject, and so that was good to see. I mean, I could say criticize one way or the other what you think about individual images from Vivian Maier and her whole story, but it was good to see actual gelatin silver prints made from original negatives. I mean, there's nothing like that.
Yeah. Well, there's here. This is when I went to the Irving Penn show a couple of years ago. That might have been the last time I was at the Met, by the way, at the Irving Penn show, maybe. But they had a couple of things there. Not only his prints, which was fantastic to see, but they had his backdrop material, like the actual
Mm,
physical material that he
yeah,
used in many of his pictures. That was there, and they
yeah,
let you couldn't stand on it, but you could take sort of a selfie in front of it. And they had his Rolleiflex camera with a Hasselblad viewfinder on, sort of Frankenstein on top of it.
yeah,
But the camera's obvious, but the background material, you know, I'm
yeah,
thinking today that a lot of people might shoot a photograph of a person on a green screen and then say, well, I can just you know drop in whatever kind of background I want, and the
yeah,
green screen material doesn't have any personality, whereas like this leftover from Irving Penn Studio is it's paint. There's only one of a kind, right? It's like
yeah.
a one of a kind painting,
It's like Marilyn Monroe's dress from that particular movie.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it's the kind of thing you would have at a museum, right? It
yeah,
it was the kind of thing because it was in a museum and it made sense in the context of the show, and it would be the kind of thing you would have in a museum.
yeah.
I guess that's what I'm kind of leading towards. The idea of an artifact. I pulled this off my shelf. Now I never actually owned one of these. My friend gave this to me, but if you look at it, and our audience can see it, but think of a microscope without the lens, right?
You
Think
got
of
an eyepiece, and you got a stage and a stand, and
and a
that's all it
mirror and a
is.
little mirror
Yeah,
on it, right?
yeah,
And most people, unless you work in a darkroom, you're not going to know what this thing is. But it's a grain focuser.
yeah,
What is a grain focuser? Well, what you used to have to do in order to make sure your prints were in focus when you were enlarging is that you would put this grain focuser on where the paper would be when you're making an enlargement. And it was important to actually have a piece of paper, sort of a scrap piece of paper that was the same thickness of the paper that you were about to print on. And you put this grain focuser on it. And what you were able to do is focus your enlarger until you saw the grain. You would look through this like a microscope and you would focus the enlarger until you could see the grain in the viewfinder of this grain focuser. And then you knew that when you took it off and you put a piece of paper in there, that your enlarger was at the right distance and it would make a print in focus. But you look at it now and it's like, what purpose does this serve?
yeah,
But this was in a darkroom. Someone's eye was put to this, and it was used. It was sat on paper, and like if this belonged to someone famous, this would be a real, something you would want to see in a museum.
yeah. Yeah, and for me, I mean, I got all my darkroom stuff. Some of it I've lent away, like my darkroom timer, the Gray Lab timer. That's the
Gray
best
Lab
thing ever.
timers, yeah,
They're
yeah,
the best, and that just the sound of it, that the little catch on the second hand, bring it around to 20 seconds or
yep,
17 seconds,
right,
whatever the exposure time is, and hit the button and use it for developing and the buzzer. It's all that whole the ritual around it, and it's the object that was kind of the center of
yeah,
that ritual when you're developing or printing. It had that wonderful multi-use.
Yeah, you said something in the before we were when we were writing about this, that your deck tall stained towels.
You had a yellow and no, it was orange and white striped terry towel that I
Right.
completely ruined. I'm sure my mother hated me for
Right.
it, but anyway, so it got these brown marks all over it, and every now and then there was enough chemical in it. I would get this tingling in my neck.
Oh, because you put it around your neck?
Yeah, because it was I tried to have a wet hand, dry hand, right? When I was doing,
Oh, I see.
particularly
Okay,
on
yeah.
Sunday nights when I was doing my long print runs, when I decided, I wanted to do the assembly line thing, right? And so I wanted to keep a wet hand and a dry hand, and I was always drying my hands and whatever. And then whenever I washed it, it had to be by itself in the wash. You're not going to wash it with anything.
Until you mentioned that, I didn't even remember the name Dectol, and Dectol is the developer that you would use for paper prints.
It was kind of a higher energy, printer. Yeah. It was good for fiber,
right? And you didn't want to get that on your clothes. That stuff generally.
And it has a particularly kind of sour smell to it. It's very unique.
Exactly, yeah.
You walk into, you could smell Fixer and you could smell the vinegar smell of the stop bath, but Dectol, when it's drying, and in particular, it's just a few inches from your face. It's it's bitter. It's a bitter smell. It's sort of like, I don't know, like beer before you drink it, or coffee before you or when it's ground, or this has got that kind of bitter family. Certainly,
it's a very organic smell in some sense.
It was,
maybe not as chemically smelling.
Yeah,
But I can't remember the. I probably mentioned this a zillion times in the past, but the old Polaroids that you would have to coat, and it was that stuff. We're talking about smells now.
Yeah,
but there was Polaroid film didn't come out with a protective coating on it. And so they gave you this little tube, and in it was this sponge that was usually like a pink or orange sponge dipped into this funky smelling vinegary, I don't know what it was, but you would pull the print off and then you would coat your Polaroid with this, and that would seal in the developer so it wouldn't fade. And it would make the print shiny too. But that smell, we talk about artifacts, and it's not only physical, but the art, that's you're talking about smells. I mean, if anything triggers, memory can be triggered by smell very easily. And I can't smell that again because the stuff doesn't exist.
No.
But if there's something that smells like it, that reminds me of that photography. And I realize all the stuff that we're talking about is all mostly about analog old photography styles. And I'm finding very little in the artifact collecting in terms of digital. I mean, even so much for the cameras. An old digital camera to me has no value. No. Even though I do have my original somewhere, but I had it out. My original Casio, it was the first digital camera I have,
and I have it megapixel, whatever.
If it was
by 480.
If it was, I think it was 320 by 200.
Oh, okay.
Frankly, I think it was. I mean, they're really teeny tiny. But I kept that, and because I never got rid of it because I tend to not sell things, but it's not something that I put on my shelf that I would want to,
No.
There's no, it's a fairly ugly looking thing in general. And it just doesn't, I just have it, but I didn't get rid of it. I'm glad I have it too, because it's kind of fun to pull it out and say, well, this is where that started. This is where digital photography started. But on my shelf, I've got, half a dozen, point and shoot film cameras, Kodak film, brownies, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm realizing that it's, when Barry and X and Greg Heisler were talking about that physicality and stuff, I really began to say this is something that we're going to be seeing less and less of, and especially if we really start talking about artificial intelligence creating imagery. Does that mean that we're no longer going to need cameras? That's a bit.
Wow,
extreme.
That sure got dark.
I don't think that will happen, but nobody could have predicted what the smartphone was going to do to the point and shoot business.
It was better and worse, right? We got people falling off the top of canyon walls, and we also got this wonderful democratization of high school kids and windows into worlds and other people's experience we wouldn't have had without. So,
Right, right.
take the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And so I don't know where this is going to go. I do know that we're living with photography now as a more disposable, less collecting kind of art form.
Yeah.
Cameras are kind of disposable. Poor cameras. If cameras were alive, you'd look at one and they would say, "No, please don't upgrade me. I still do. I still work."
Yeah.
And if it's one kind of Sony and the next kind of Sony comes out, the owner says, "Well, screw you, old Sony. I'm going to get this new Sony." And that poor old
Right.
Sony is sitting there, and then it doesn't, whether it sits on the shelf or it gets sold to somebody, but it doesn't sit on a shelf as an object, as an artifact of the past. It may, but I doubt it.
Yeah, there has to be something special about it for sure.
Right.
But that's the nature of, recursive engineering, continuous improvement. That's what we've become. I mean, I think part of it is with film cameras before the digital age, you would hang on to, let's say, you had a twin lens and you went to a 35 millimeter and you found that the 35 millimeter had more frames in it and the films were becoming a little bit better. You kept your twin lens because, it's still useful. You can still use it, and you could jump back to it if you wanted this big square negative or whatever. Now with digital, we have these jumps where what's left behind isn't useful anymore. Like you were just saying, right?
Right. Right.
You're moving ahead, and now you've got this thing that doesn't cut the mustard anymore. Where the old film cameras, you could be 50 years old, and you could still, if you buy film for it, it was still useful, and you got into whatever the qualities, the properties of that particular camera were. Now we're just sort of, well, you don't want to shoot over ISO 400 or it'll look like garbage. Like there's a showstopper right there.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking that, yeah, like I was able to, with the help of some 3D printed spool adapters, was able to put 120 film into a 620 sized box camera from 1912. I haven't developed that film yet, by the way.
Hey, you should, because I did.
I know. I
had the pictures from whatever 2016 or 2017 from that brownie that I took, and they're pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I've got
6x9 negatives too.
I've got 7 or 8 rolls of. Maybe I'll do that next week. Is send them in, but okay, great. So I've got that film from a camera for over 100 years ago, and probably has something on it, and it was useful. Just like you're saying, you can reuse these things. But I buy I don't know what I have. My Nikon D2X, right? What are the chances of me finding a new battery for that thing? There's no batteries being made for that anymore, so I can't get the camera to work. Or some of there's some of my other cameras I know I can't get batteries for. The Casio, by the way, used AA, so I can still, as long as they make AA's, I can put them in. But
I have that Olympus C5050, which is a god awful slow camera, but it took alkaline or lithium AA's, 4 of them. And you got a fair amount of pictures out of them.
Yeah, but in a sense, these things that you can't even get batteries for, you're right. Like automatically, they're no longer of any value. You can't go back and say, why would I want to go back and shoot, a 4 megapixel camera, right?
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason to want to do that. No. So those things just lose any kind of value. So I guess the idea is like, we have more artifacts from the days of analog, which actually are in a sense maybe not artifacts. We can still use them. We still can shoot slides. We can still record. I mean, I've got a Polaroid camera now, right? That and they've made Polaroid film again. And this picture I'm holding up of me and Elizabeth, I mentioned in the last show, that's a direct, analog recording of the light. This is like your slide, right? This is no different than your slide.
And both of you handled that print. Like there's all kinds of
right.
Like I call, maybe it's not the right word, but metaphysical aspects to it as an artifact, as a thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, from what I said at the beginning, when you go to a museum and you stand in front of a very famous painting, you know that you can see the brush strokes, right? So you know that the artist who is very famous and you're loving their work, they're responsible for those brush strokes. They made the thickness. They stood at the same distance that you are most likely from that painting.
Yeah.
Photography is some of the same things. Like, if I had that backdrop that Irving Penn had, then I knew he handled it. He held it. People who were famous stood on that thing or stood in front of it or whatever.
Back into this corner and crouch a little bit. Good.
Right. Imagine having those panels that he had used as they probably shabby, if they even existed, they'd be shabby, but still people would have that. You would today, and I don't want to get into the it's going to sound old fogey kind of thing, but now we have NFTs, which is this purchasing of digital data, digital art, which is stuff that doesn't exist in reality. And of course it makes sense. This is the world we're in. We're in a digital world, and so people are adapting to doing this. But digital does not lend itself to an artifact. Maybe the actual, I have an old Macintosh computer. Sure, that's the computer physically itself is an artifact. In fact, I had an old Mac and I got rid of it. And I'm kind of bummed out that I did, but I don't need to collect more stuff. So, but it's a collection. But the stuff that's on the computer, right? The files and and I'm kind of finding this out now because I'm going through some of Elizabeth's old stuff, and I'm finding. And I'm not going to read any of this because it's very personal, but she's got these letters, or they might have been. I don't know if they were letters or journal entries or something like that, and they're very personal. I've been reading them, and I started to scan them, and I was like, okay, why am I scanning them? Because I've got her handwriting here. I mean, she actually stood there and she wrote this stuff, and I can see the style of her handwriting. And I was thinking, for some reason, I'm scanning all these documents and bills and stuff I scan. But as I started to scan these, I'm thinking, why am I doing that? Like, what would I preserve them for? Why would I preserve them digitally? If I preserve them digitally, and part of me had a moment thought of like, well, I'll shred her originals and I'll have the scans. And I was like, wait a minute, but I've totally lost the whole point of an artifact, of something that had some meaning. Scanning it would be preserving it for some future generation to, poke around on my computer or whatever. And frankly, if she saw that other people were going to read this other than me, and I don't even think she wanted me to read this stuff, but I've got it. She would come back and haunt them, to the ends of the earth. She'd probably haunt me too and kill me in the afterlife, right? And so I was thinking, like, okay, there's no point. This is the object. This is it. This is where the buck ends. And so. Again, this idea of the artifact, of something that will last and have meaning, and so many things we're moving away from. And again, it sort of ties back to the Becher exhibit too, because a lot of the stuff that they were photographing.
Nice callback, by the way.
Right, thank you. Very good. I like that when it works out. Hey,
we're here all evening.
Yeah, I know. They're photographing something. I don't know if they were photographing a lot of the stuff was still working, but a lot of it wasn't. And I'm sure much of what they were photographing has been torn down and no longer exists. Yeah. So the only record we have is their prints and their negatives. And compare that to like the Midjourney AI thing, where there is nothing. The creation has no mechanism. It has almost. And does that mean, does it have meaning or not? And so maybe that's sort of an open question.
No, well, I could philosophically, I think they certainly do, because you entered those and I entered those words for in the prompt, and we got something that has much deeper meaning than we could have imagined. I mean, even with my little bit of playing.
Right, but whose meaning is it? Right?
Yeah, okay.
I know. I'm just putting out the question.
Meaning is meaning. If it means something to me, it has meaning.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it at that.
And I'm going to stand by that.
Okay, we'll stand by that. I think we'll have to probably put the rest of our artifacts on hold. Although we did talk a little while for that, but
maybe we could bring a guest in or something.
I would like to talk. I really, for some reason, this has some meaning to me, and I don't know if it's just, yes, I'm just an old guy. Like, what will the equivalent, 40 years from now, our counterparts talking about digital on some podcast? What will they be talking about in terms of artifacts? Will they just not be part of that conversation anymore?
Right.
And does it mean anything? Does it only mean things to us, or does it have some? I guess it's going to have meaning, because that's why we have museums.
Yeah.
Museums are storehouses of artifacts that have had meaning, and it's funny that I'll end on this, but like the Metropolitan Museum of Art has things in it that, like, we're calling art now, but say when they were made, they were just practical. Like, they had these spoons, that someone was using. And yes, they were very decorative, but it was a spoon. Someone used it to, put sugar in their tea or something like that. But now, as they said in, in Indiana Jones, buried in the sand for 1,000 years, it comes out, it's priceless.
Yeah.
And now it's some kind of artifact that has meaning, and yes, let's put it into museum. So
yeah, I would agree.
I don't know what we learned from this.
Well, we chatted. It was all good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, that's we've gone over, but yeah, it's only been 2 weeks. We haven't talked to each other.
Nope.
In a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Well, we've been tossing things back and forth over social media, but
yes, yeah,
that's about it.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Where are we looking for you on the interwebs, and where do we find you now on
Vero?
Vero, yeah.
So most of my work still, although I will be going back towards Vero, I think in the future. I'm Ward Rosin Fine Art on Instagram. I'm Ward Rosin Photography on Facebook, and both Twitter and Vero are W Rosin Photo. So it's WROSIN Photo. That's where you find me, or just look for my name. I think I'm the only one around, as far as I know. And I have a small business called Ornis Photo, where I sell lens adapters and 7 Artisans lenses for Fuji E mount and
X mount,
Fuji X mount, and Sony
E mounts. Yeah.
So
getting anything new?
Getting anything new? Nothing right now. I think I got a little bit of inventory to sell, but to make an order.
Right. Our unofficial sponsor. Yeah. So I finally have a place to say that you can look for my photography, other than Facebook, which is Rosario Photography, and my website, AM Rosario. On Vero, I'm at AM Rosario. So I was managed. I got that name, and I'm also on Twitter at AM Rosario. So if you want to see new pictures and you don't want to follow me on Facebook, which I imagine is just for the older folks these days, go find me on Vero. So at AM Rosario. And yeah, that's it. It was great hanging out with you tonight.
Once again, it was great. I really liked the discussion. I think it's been good. And the summer is over.
The summer is over. I think we might have a guest for next time, if I can get him to
cool.
make some time. So I'll just leave that to, I won't say who it is in case we don't get him. But
all right. We know it's a him, I think.
Is definitely a him, yes.
Right.
And we need some hers, too. And I'd like to get some thems as well.
Yeah, we need them.
Like all people. Yep, all of them. All right, so thanks for hanging out with us tonight, and see you in a couple of weeks. And Ward, have a good night.
You too. See ya. Bye.
Bye.